just certainly honor God for another Wednesday, Transformation Wednesday. Put that in the chat, Transformation Wednesday. Again, we endeavor in 15 minutes what some can't do in an hour and 50 minutes. Let me digress. But we just give God the honor for this platform. And I want to appreciate all of you who are faithful to it and tuning in every week to Transformation. This particular series is another wow. Put that in the chat. Wow, wow, wow. I want to thank you all for the positive feedback. We have visitors watching this from around the world, taking a look at this. And again, this is, to God be the glory. How he even dropped this in my spirit. This was after Easter. It wasn't even during a time of conflict as relates to current events and things in the world. It's just God just dropped this in my spirit. And as a consequence, I said, well, we got to look at that. And so, we developed revelation on it. And so here we are. I think we're 5 or 6 weeks in. Amen. And I pray you are receiving it just as exciting as I am to teach it. So to God be the glory for all that. All right, let's get started. Got 15 minutes? Good. Now, we have been talking about conflict resolution. And let's just put our simple definition up there again. And again, it is the process that one uses to find a peaceful solution. All right, the process, the analysis, the cognitive technique you use to create or to search or to seek the peaceful solution. And again, we've been making this point every week that if there is a peaceful solution, then there is also a non-peaceful solution. And many of us are very acquainted with the non-peaceful option. All right, so we don't spend a lot of time on that. We're trying to choose and highlight the idea of a peaceful solution. Now, the scripture we've used each week to help explain this has been Matthew chapter 5, verse 9. And again, it says, let's read it together. We should know it by heart now, but let's read it together. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. And remember, we flip that. We flip that in terms of our understanding. You can literally say you are called the children of God if you are peacemakers. And I think the whole idea here is that being peacemakers is not optional. If you're in the body of Christ, one of the things that God has assigned to us is the ability to bring peace to chaotic situations. After all, isn't that what he has done and is doing in our lives? He brings us peace. He's the Prince of Peace. Many of us are familiar with the night he's with his disciples on the boat. I believe that's Matthew chapter 14. And the storm is just going crazy. And thank God that while the storm is going crazy, they have him on their boat. That'll preach, but I'm going to digress. But if you remember, they awaken Jesus out of the boat. And when they do, he says a couple of things, but I want to just home in on the idea that he says to the wind and to the waves, peace be still. And if you remember, everything calmed down. When he spoke, peace be still, everything calmed down. Now, in a macro level, not even that deep spiritually, that's our role. That's our assignment, that we might walk in rooms, that we might walk in workplaces and family situations and utter within the frameworks of our mind, peace be still. I'm not saying say it loud. I'm not saying you need a robe on, but somewhere in our minds, peace be still, which is the idea that whatever is going on, now that Jesus is involved, or now that we can invoke the presence of God, peace should abound somewhere. That's our task. And as I said before, we're not supposed to be fire starters. We're not supposed to be people who fan flames. We're supposed to be spiritual firemen in the sense we're supposed to put out fires. Put out fires. And that's our role. That's really the whole synopsis of this series. So we've looked at it. I want to jump right back into what we talked about. We got into our principles. And one of the principles we talked about a few weeks ago was, number one, if we're going to be conflict resolvers or invoke resolutions in conflict, if we're going to do that, the first thing we have to do is to avoid conflict. Put that in the chat. Avoid conflict. And I made that point that we have to become okay with walking away. All right, that's kind of a little theme song there. Become okay walking away. You and I do not have to respond to people. First of all, we won't have to respond to people at all. But secondly, we don't have to respond to people the same way they respond to us. We have the ability to walk away. And I know when you walk away, you're called names, and you get castigated for that. I get it. I understand. It's very difficult to walk away, particularly when you walk away. You're still called a name. You're still this and a that and and all. I get it, but that is in reality the clearest way to create resolution in conflict is to walk away from it. Is to say, you know what, I'm just gonna keep it moving. So don't be afraid to avoid conflict. And I know I know that's very difficult. But remember now, we read Matthew chapter 5 verse 9, but I think verse 10 says, "Blessed are they that are persecuted for righteousness' sake." Now you can get in trouble for doing right. You can, according to some cliques, you can get wrong thrown at you for doing right. There's no question about it. But Jesus says, "Blessed are you," meaning I see what you're doing, and there's going to be a special blessing for those of you who can walk away from conflict. For those of us who can avoid it altogether. Some places you just I know you're grown, and I know you can do what you want to do, whatever, but sometimes you gotta walk away from it. Kenny Rogers sung that song. You gotta know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, yes, and know when to run. You gotta count your money. When you're sitting at the table, there'll be times another counting, yes, when the deal is done. But anyway, but you got to know when to fold them. You got to know when to walk away, know when to run. And when you get to a certain age and a certain stage, them little names they call you anyway, they don't matter at all. All right, so avoid conflict if you can. And then last week, I'm going to drop, and this is where I want to drop my anchor tonight. We looked at the second principle, which is to accept responsibility. All right. It takes two to argue. It takes two to tango. It takes two to stir up the conflict and the tension. Be very weird for somebody to get hyped by themselves. If you see somebody do that, you might want to run and call somebody. So in lieu of that, it takes two, one of the first rules or the general rules of counseling is to hear both sides. Let me just drop there for a second. All right. If you ever called upon to settle a dispute amongst maybe your friends, some coworkers, another couple or what have you, always remember the golden rule. You gotta hear both sides. No no court case can be settled fairly with just one side being represented. That's not really my problem in the legal system with grand juries. You know, grand juries are simply a special called jury that the prosecutor only the prosecutor presents their case to the grand jury. And at the end of this 4, 5, 6 week summation, and they really sum up the evidence. But at the end of those 4, 5, 6 weeks, they ask that special grand jury, what do you think? You think we got a case? And of course you got a case. You haven't heard any opposing information. You haven't heard no defense counsel. You've heard no stand against it at all. It is such a nebulous nuance in the law, if you ask my opinion. But let me again digress. But always remember, there are two sides to every story. All right. And when it comes to conflict, if you find yourself in a conflict or you have found yourself in a conflict, go back and look at it. And where you went wrong, where you went left, where you said something you shouldn't have said, where you uttered something you can't take back, you know, kind of accept responsibility for that. You're never going to be a peacemaker until you can accept responsibility. Every couple I have married, in our premarital counseling sessions, we spend a session on forgiveness. And do you have a partner that says, I'm sorry? I spend a lot of time on that, because if you can't say, I'm sorry, if you cannot acknowledge your responsibility, if you can't say my bad every once in a while, you're going to be in trouble. A good man on a good night can still blow it. A good woman on a good night can still blow it. A good kid on a good day can still blow it. And you're just going to have to know how to say, I'm sorry, my bad. And all you can do is apologize. And after you apologize and forgive you, we can have that discussion on another day. But essentially, that's all you can do. But you got to accept your responsibility in the conflict, accept your responsibility as a consequence of the conflict. All right, now we hit this last week, but I wanted to, because I did it at the last part of our session, and I just wanted to really emphasize this, because this is a critical part. If you can't say I'm sorry, conflict will ensue, and worse yet, bitterness begins to show up. It is tough to deal with somebody who can't say I'm sorry. All right, so don't let that be you. All right. But anyway, look, Matthew chapter 26, verse 69 through the following. This is when Peter denied the Lord. And I wanted to look at this because Peter initially doesn't accept responsibility. Now watch this. Tell me if you've heard this before. In verse 69. Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him and said, you too were with Jesus the Galilean. Look at this, verse 79. What did he do? But he denied it before them all. And listen to what he said. Tell me if you heard this. I don't know what you're talking about. And every now and then you can have a conflict with a person, or you can have an argument with a person, or you have a discussion with a person, and you go back and review. Now, here's what you said. And they look at you in the face and say, I don't know what you're talking about. I have a coworker who know they did, know they were out of pocket, know they went left. And you tell them about it weeks later and say, I don't know what you're talking about. You mean you know what you're talking about? It's on video, man. Really? That's how we rolling? So Peter's initial reaction to his denial was, I don't even know what you're talking about. Now watch this. Watch the progression of denials, or the progression of not accepting responsibility. All right, so I know what you're talking about. Verse 71. And when he had gone out to the gateway, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystander, I'm telling y'all, this man was with Jesus the Nazarene. I'm telling you he was. In verse 72. And again, because if you don't accept responsibility the first time, all you do is progress the denial. And again, he denied it with an oath. And he says, I do not know the man. I don't know what y'all talking about. You can almost handle somebody who says, all right, I just disagree with you. At least acknowledge the facts. You know, you acknowledge the facts, and we still got differences of opinion. All right, maybe you walk away from that. But when a person you just denies the facts altogether, you know, it was Tuesday when you tripped me. Tuesday? What you talking about? What do you mean? What am I talking about? You tripped me. You don't remember tripping me? I have no idea what you're talking about. That's tough. Let's put that in the chat. That's altogether something different there. Nonetheless, I'm talking about when we have done something wrong, whether they do it or not. When we have done something wrong, when we have been out of pocket, accept responsibility. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. And second thing, because here's how it progresses. He said, I don't even know the man. He said, I don't even know Jesus. Now, everybody knows you. This is the same guy who says, Jesus, if somebody gonna mess with you, I got you. He gonna sit here and say, I don't even know Jesus. Now, well, I couldn't be God. But anyway, let's go. Now watch this. I don't know the man. Verse 73. And a little while the bystander came and said to Peter, watch the progression now. Surely you are one of them too, for even your speech gives you away. Your Galilean accent gives you away, because your language is a dead giveaway. People know when you save. People know when you represent Christ. They can tell by how you talk. And then some of us got to really go deep to become hood, so to speak. Peter tried his best to deny the Lord, but his voice was giving him away, perhaps the sweat on his brow, because if you line and progression with deniability, at some point your heart's beating fast, you whatever. Things are changing. But I want you to see this. All right. Surely you're one of them. Your speech gives you away. Verse 74. Then he began to do what? Now, don't be afraid to read it. Then he began to do what? Curse. Because the progression of deniability is the first, act like you is to totally deny the facts. Secondly, to act like you have no idea where the facts come from. But then thirdly, you have the mitigated gall now to put some curse words around the deniability of the facts. I don't know what he said, but you can imagine boop, 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 what he said. He cursed and began to swear. I don't know the man. Curse words with it. And many of us are dealing with people who you know, we've had conflict with, and they don't accept responsibility. And when you try to bring it up to them, it starts off with, I don't know what you're talking about. Then it gets into the whole denial of the fact pattern. What day? Tuesday? Is that even a day? Nonsense. And then it escalates to name calling and curse words, and you'll find yourself just, you can't be serious. I'm saying tonight, where that might have been you, where you're a person who has denied your responsibility in it. I'm saying today, tonight, accept responsibility. The Bible says, after all of that, at that moment, I love this part of the verse, at that moment, a rooster crowed. And it is my job tonight to sound the spiritual alarm so that tonight you hear the rooster crowing. Where you have done something wrong, where you have said something wrong, and all of us have been there, where you've said something you shouldn't have said, and all of us have been there, where you've spoken faster than you were thinking, and all of us have been there, where you said something mean, you didn't think it was mean, but in hindsight, yeah, that was that. And then all of us have been there. I'm saying in those scenarios, acknowledge your responsibility and apologize for it. Go back and say, my bad. What? Yeah, we're peacemakers. The mantle of peacemaking is on us. And it's our responsibility to create peace. All right. So let's avoid conflict, number one. And then number two, let's accept responsibility. All right. And I said last week, and we'll end on this one. Forgiveness or saying I'm sorry might not even be for them. Might not even be for them. Whether they accept or not, whether they change, whether the relationship get better or not, whatever. It's for you. It's so you can move on. And there is nothing like the freedom of being released from the tension. Not even your enemies can take that away from you. How you smiling and me and you supposed to be beefing? Because I've gotten a release from it. And when God is giving you release, who the Son has set free is free indeed. And God will free you. And I was going to say you'll be surprised. But some of you know that's true. Some of you deal with people that y'all have had conflict, but you're able to speak to them. You're able to smile. Now they trip. They try to avoid you. They try to still say this and that. But you good. And that's what I want us to be. I want us to be in a place of peace. And I want us to be in a place where we good. You're the one that's got to deal with that. All right. So number one, avoid the conflict. And then finally, number two, accept responsibility. We'll go forward with this further on next week. To God be the glory.